Hi, this is Jim Dillingham from D&Z. The following video is of our structural retrofit projects that we've done, just emphasizing our capabilities and going into existing buildings and handling repairs. We've done a lot of projects where we get called out during a real estate escrow sale. Someone's got a structural concern, something might not be correctly done, and we've gone out to those, and some of them turn out to be some serious problems that we've been able to fix for the homeowners. In particular, oftentimes in residential construction especially, contractors even today decide to build a house without thinking about load path, without thinking about what members can span and what capabilities they have. And it really requires an engineer or someone to think clearly about the load path on most buildings to be able to get point loads from or even running loads from roof conditions down through floors and walls and properly to foundations. This particular house we were brought out to because the entire floor was wavy, the walls were cracking, the ceilings were sagging. What we found was that the frame of the house was just done completely inadequately. I'd like to say that this was a once in a lifetime occurrence, but actually we've seen it many a times. So we can come into a condition like this, and most people can actually identify that this condition is not adequate. I mean, obviously you see a supporting 2x4, supporting a 4x beam that's heavily bowed and with rafters bowed above it. Obviously it's not okay. Most people can tell that. We can come in and we can actually follow the load paths correctly, come in and put foundation elements in the proper locations. You see continuous foundations here. Well, these actually mimic where the walls above are located. Those walls above are supporting the roof. They were just coming down and landing on 2x6 floor joists that weren't supported. Of course, everything's failing. Luckily, with most conditions, especially timber framing, you can fix things. We were actually able to raise the ceiling, get it back so the roof was planing out correctly. We were able to raise the drywall ceiling lid as well and get out all the deflections in that. We were able to get a lot of the deflections out of the floor, and that was all done by putting the proper beam supports in and then jacking the house up as best as possible. We weren't able to get it perfect, but we were able to get a lot of deflection out. This was another house, similarly framed incorrectly. You've got bearing conditions that were post or off of pier blocks. Pier blocks are just in dirt, but even worse, you've got point loads coming down from the roof onto walls that are not supported correctly, that are just landing on floor joists below. So in this case, we follow those point loads like should have been done originally to locations in the foundation, and we find, oh, there's nothing there. So we end up going underneath the house and designing the proper foundation support to carry those loads. And then in the process of construction, we usually are heavily involved helping the contractor out, figure out how to correct the situation and how to go through the retrofit design, including jacking the house up. And here's the detailed example of where we're throwing in a new footing, a new post and pier line on footings to support a wall line that was being used as a bearing condition. Well, that wall line was just over a floor joist system, not even over the support. So you had the whole floor sagging. It's pretty easy to identify that when you walk into a house and you feel dips in the floor system. And oftentimes in today's real estate, especially in a buyer's market, buyers are interested in making sure that everything's correct with their house. Well, if you feel a sagging floor, it's a good idea to call us out because we can identify the condition, and oftentimes it's an easy condition to fix. This particular house was a challenge. It was in Santa Barbara area. It had 2x4 roof system. 2x4 ridge, overspanned completely, bowing significantly. It needed a new roof, and a roofer wouldn't come in and put it on a new roof because he wasn't willing to warranty with the poor structural condition. So we had the challenge of trying to retrofit the roof without harming the inside of this house because it had just gone through a bunch of interior remodels. We were able to do that by throwing beam systems above the ceiling joists and then redesigning a roof system above that. We also had to come down through the floor system and retrofit and install new foundation for these point loads. So it's all about following load path correctly, just something that really isn't rocket science. It just takes time to do, and a builder with the right mindset can do it. But the ones who don't care are the ones that produce projects like this, and then we have to come in afterwards and fix them. This is that particular house. We were able to do this in 3D modeling. It was a good tool to be able to give the subcontractor, especially the framer, a good idea of what kind of scope of work he was going to go through on this house. And we prefer to do most of our projects in this fashion of 3D modeling. It's just not always a possibility because of budget regions, but whenever it is a possibility, it does give an added bonus because you get to really see the project before it gets constructed. And this shows all the beams that we had to throw in place in order to support things adequately. So we had rafter spans that were 20 feet of a 2x4. So not only did we have to support it correctly at the ridge, but we had to come down at mid-support and give it support that it needed as well. And once we get involved on fixing the roof system, the loads that are applied really are just utilized during our whole design. So it doesn't matter so much if you're deciding on going with a heavy clay tile roof or a light composition roof, because if once we're doing the retrofit, we could either design for the heavy load or the lighter load. So we have plenty of experience with fire rebuilds. We've done lots of them over the years, all over the state. This one in particular is in Berkeley. It's a partial burn, but it was a challenge at that because it was an older house. So every time something needs to be repaired, it has to be repaired to current code. So this entire house, even though just the back half of it burned, the entire part was redesigned. At that point, every fire rebuild that we've done has been a pretty radical change of the original design. It's just because owners' desires. They've lived with the house for a certain amount of years, and now they need to rebuild it, and most of the time they don't want to rebuild the same thing, and this is one of those conditions. The upper story used to be an attic. Sometime in the past they came by and put rooms in there, but they never did anything properly structural for it, plus they had really tight ceilings. So in the redesign, we rebuilt the entire third story to make it more usable. And the house was old enough to where it didn't have any lateral design to it, so we did a complete lateral redesign on the house. So we're utilizing the existing studs, putting plywood sheathing, anchor bolts, and hold downs, all the structural elements that go into a lateral system. This particular house was also modeled. This is a SketchUp program. It's available to anybody actually for free from Google. It's not as involved as our other 3D modeling program, but it really gives a good perspective of what the house will look like. We put it into this program because in order to get a permit, we had to do a shadowing survey, how the building shadows the other buildings around it, and that was done most successfully in SketchUp. It actually worked quite well, and we got the permit. This was a fire rebuild that we did in El Dorado County. It was most of a burn down, except for the foundation was not damaged. So we reused a good portion of the foundation as much as possible. The house was a complete redesign. It was a fairly simple house that burned down, and then turned out being a highly customized house that went back in. But we did utilize the existing foundations, and that's possible. It's happened on quite a few of our fire rebuilds. As long as the foundation was done adequately in the first place, we usually can use it. This shows the existing foundation, the old anchor bolts that were in place that we were able to utilize. This was a fire rebuild in the Santa Barbara area that was a complete fire rebuild. We first started to try to reuse the back retaining wall. The stem was too damaged. We had it tested, it was cracking, so we had to cut the stem out. Then we thought we could try to reuse the foundation. It just turned out, because of the depth of where the foundation was, it was easier for the contractor to come and rip the whole thing out. Sometimes that makes for a better project, a cleaner project, that you get a complete new foundation, new retaining wall in this house in the back holding up a large hillside. That house sits right on top of it. You get the surety that everything's done correctly, waterproofing, structural design. And it really comes down to a lot of communication. When we have a fire job, it's actually one of our more challenging jobs to go through. The owners obviously have a detrimental condition that they're living through. We've got contractors involved, and worst of all, we've got insurance agents involved. So we've got really tight budgets that we're trying to conform to, with owners wanting the latest and greatest, and the contractors and designers just trying to give as best as we can to get these people back into their homes. So I think for our experience, we've done certain areas. We've done Tahoe area and Goro fire. We've done local fires around El Dorado County. We've done quite a bit of fire redesign for both the Jesusita and the T fires in Santa Barbara, and we've really learned a lot through the process. Oftentimes we go to existing commercial buildings that weren't done adequately. This was one in our area, the Placerville area. Building was done in the 70s. The trusses that were thrown onto the roof were never designed properly, and that is an understatement. They were failing. We've gone through this whole building, and we provided a retrofit repair plan for all these trusses. Not only the trusses, but the supporting beams were inadequate as well. So we can go into an old building that's inadequate, and we can repair it. We can repair the beams, we can repair the framing. In this case, we can repair trusses, and we can even repair trusses to a point where they can support mechanical load, HVAC unit. And this is a picture of that building with the repairs. Here's the standard repairs on just the roof joists that are just supporting roof load. These are roof joists that are even beefed up further to support the mechanical unit above. This building here is our office building. We bought it in a foreclosed state. It was a total dump. The design of it was just improper from the beginning in the 70s. It had structural problems. It had water penetration problems, and we gutted it completely. It had the ugly roof on top of it that had roof joists that were spanning a good distance, but the worst problem about them is that they were 4 feet on center, so there was inadequate support for the roof sheathing. We came in and we put new joists in between the existing joists, so we have joists at the regular interval, 2 feet on center, nice strong roof system. We put mansards around it to make it look like a hip roof. We tore out the entire inside, we reskinned the entire outside, put new windows in, new insulation, redid all the electrical, and now we have a new building. It's actually the nicest building in the block, and it started when we bought it to be the ugliest building in the block. If you have any questions about what we can do for your existing buildings, if they have problems, if they need retrofits, if there's failures, if you have the unfortunate occurrence of a fire in your home, please give us a call. We'd be happy to help out.